just locked in the house right now. Oh, yes. We block you. We're watching TV after you.
Great.
Recording in progress.
Welcome, members of the public. We just concluded our executive session and now in the public portion of the Township Committee meeting. I now ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. I would like to announce two mayoral appointments to the Township Planning Board. Emily Chang will serve as alternate 1, term concluding on December 31, 2025. Dan Miller, alternate 2, term concluding on December 31, 2026. I am pleased to see the high level of volunteerism in the Township, with many boards and committees staffed with capable and caring members of the community. I've talked about an admired American way of life here in the Township, and the robust volunteerism that I see across the board is a large reason why. There is much work this year, so I wish all of our volunteers and leaders much success. This evening's agenda includes a resolution on affordable housing. This resolution comes from the collective work of the members of this committee, administration, and legal professionals advocating for the Township to the fullest extent possible, all the while staying in lockstep with the state's procedures and standards for affordable housing. Our professionals shall provide greater context for the benefit of the public this evening, but I did want to emphasize just a couple key points to our community. So why are we doing this now? The first deadline of the state's process is January 31, and whereby municipalities have two choices: either accept or challenge the fair share estimate provided by the state. This evening we are ready to meet that first deadline, and based on our work, we'll challenge the state's estimates with our modified numbers. The modified figure in this resolution represents approximately a 10% reduction from the state's estimate. It is not an arbitrary haircut, nor is it a flippant response to the state's initiative. It is a modest yet meaningful reduction to the Township. The analysis is data-driven, thoughtful, and complies with the definitions and calculations set by the state. It was important for this committee, on behalf of the residents, to capitalize on every tool and metric afforded to us by the state's fourth-round process, as well as to critically think through scenarios and outcomes to work towards a housing plan that is not only state compliant, but also delivers maximum benefit to the Township. A plan embraced by the Township on terms agreeable to us. Be advised, however, that the process also provides for our modification to be appealed. It is our position that should our analysis be subject to an appeal review, it would emerge as sound and consistent with the state's guidelines. We recognize it is easy to be fixated on numbers in this resolution, but we want you to know this is a multi-step process starting with this evening's resolution. The state's procedure now provides for a municipality to further fine-tune its estimate over the next several months based on additional parameters provided by the state. The objective by June 30th is the formulation of a strategic plan that finalizes unit numbers and promotes pathways for the realization of housing units. While this work is yet to be completed, we do anticipate a material reduction of the estimates in tonight's resolution based on variables the state has made available to us for this next step of the process for more refined calculations. This is welcome news for the Township, as it should allow for us to meet our obligations in a manner in which it can be embraced by this community. The development of the strategic plan will be difficult and oftentimes challenging work. It will also be an open process where appropriate, with avenues for review and input by the community. I anticipate our communications throughout the process for this next step will be much enhanced, and we shall do our very best going forward to provide, where permissible, timely information and opportunities for discussion. Thank you. If I may now ask for Township Committee reports.
I'm up first, who's on first? Well, start on
Please
this
do,
side.
Mr.
How's
McHugh.
that? Mayor, is that okay?
Wonderful.
So So I'll start with the Environmental Commission. Sorry about that. I'll start with the Environmental Commission. One thing to stay tuned to, although we're a little chilly here in the wintertime, spring is going to be here very soon, and the phase 2 of the Shunpike, the Shunpike Restoration Project. Think about your volunteering hat in the spring. That'll come up, so pay attention to sites in the Environmental Commission announcements, and you can certainly partake what was phase 1, a really very successful introduction of more trees on Shunpike Field. Second, and following up on the mayor's comments, there are still a need for some volunteers, and so the community has stepped up, and we need 1 or 2 step up more, one of which of those is on the Environmental Commission, so we'll pay attention to that. Switching over to the library, be aware that the library back hallway is open for the springtime book sale. We are considering the donations are, you can drop them off in that back hallway for the friends to sell those books. So it's a 2-phase thing. You drop off what is gently used and maybe come back in the spring and acquire some new books to read. The library, some things that have happened. The library served as a collection point for a donation drive supporting the residents of Los Angeles who lost their belongings in the wildfires. So kudos to them. In February, the library will again serve as a drop-off location for a local Girl Scout troop. They are collecting personal hygiene items for people who are experiencing homelessness. On another item, there is Miss Laurel, who is the Youth Service Children's Program Coordinator, has introduced a new program that's very, very highly attended. It's called Sensory Playtime, and this is something for young children. And it is a new program introduced earlier this year. Well, it is early in the year. What it is that the children have playtime that includes all 5 senses. And studies have shown very clearly that the more senses engaged, the more they learn. And so that's something to check out for those of our residents who have younger people. And finally, we do point out that there is an access to consumer reports, which is free at the library. So if you're planning on buying anything and you don't get access to things that rate or give you direction, please do take advantage of that because it's free at your Library of the Chathams. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Committeeman. Committeewoman Law.
My committees have been off to a slow start for the year, so I think I gave some of my time over to Marty. Yeah, most it's mostly been focused on reorg meetings. I mean, I will remind residents of all the wonderful things our senior center has to offer. And I'm looking right now at their list of their schedule, very active schedule, so definitely take advantage. They originally had planned to do the work in the senior center over the holidays, and I know that was delayed. So I will find out when they plan to reschedule, because I'm sure they're going to have to shut down, some of the operations there. But I don't have that information right now. So, but otherwise, yep, that's it for me.
Thank you. Committeewoman Rowland.
Thank you, Mayor. The Chatham Area Chamber of Commerce is kicking off their 2025 season with their first meeting at Crew on Main Street on February 5th from 6 to 7:30. The Historical Society, the Red Schoolhouse Museum, is open this weekend on Sunday from 2 to 4. They have some great new things over there. Last month I popped in and there were kids sitting around using actual typewriters, and they were having a great time. They were there for hours, so it was really neat. They're also having in their speaker series a speaker giving a presentation on Geraldine Rockefeller Dodge, and that will be on February 23rd, Sunday, at 3:30 at the library. From the Board of Health, soon, not quite yet, but you will be able to renew your dog and cat licenses online. But in the meantime, you can follow the previous process and do it via paper. And I think that was it. I think we also had the great opportunity, the mayor and I, to attend the Lunar New Year celebration at the high school, and it just covered all aspects of Chinese culture, from music to art to plays, and it was all ages, and it was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Committeeman Alperowitz.
Thank you, Mayor. For public safety, myself and all of us actually had the pleasure of attending the installation dinner of the Green Village Fire Department, where they install their new officers, and the chief takes his annual commitment to continue to protect the town. It was a really wonderful evening, hearing a lot about the Green Village Fire Department, what they do, how they protect a good portion of Chatham Township as well as parts of Harding. And it was really inspirational to see so many generations of members present, and all the volunteerism that goes into it. It's very strong within the Green Village Fire Department. They did honor their Fireman of the Year, who was above and beyond, not just attending all the calls, but doing so much of the work that goes into helping the public and running the operations there. Peter Fawcett was named the, I don't know what the official title was, but I believe it was the Fireman of the Year or Fireperson of the Year. And then I also did speak with the auxiliary department. So if you are not the kind of person who wants to go running into a burning building, which is very understandable, they have an excellent auxiliary department that does fundraising and events and public relations and a lot of other things to help support the fire people of the great town. The common theme among all of our first responders will always be more members are always wanted, and donations are gladly accepted if you are unable to. And that is as well with the, I didn't speak with the Chatham Township Fire Department, but I did notice that they were also seeking used chainsaws, not electric ones, but for their emergency response. So if anybody happens to have one. And on the emergency squad, in addition to members and donations, their annual fund drive is about to begin, and I think that's it from the first aid. Finally, I think residents are aware of the bridge that is being closed as of Friday, the Passaic Street Bridge. I just wanted to thank the police department, the traffic officer, and the police department for installing a temporary traffic light at the corner of Fairmount and River, which is inevitably where all the traffic will flow. And we urge residents to proceed cautiously as they traverse over to New Providence and Berkeley Heights. That's all.
Thank you. I think we've covered quite a number of bases. The only thing I would like to add is that January is a special month. It's a month of remembrance for Martin Luther King Jr. On the 20th of that morning, there was an MLK food drive and prayer service held at the Chatham United Methodist Church. They had accepted donations, which I understood were light early in the morning, but the pace of donations, I'm told, picked up briskly after people were able to shovel out of their driveways. So thank you all who had donated generously. I had the honor of announcing a joint proclamation with the borough during the prayer service to honor Dr. King and his work. There were members from Interfaith in attendance, along with Jack and Jill of America organization, members of this committee, and community members from both the township and borough. So I was very proud to take part in that day and the services that were held in honor of Dr. King with regard to his vision for justice, equality, and peace. So thank you. I'd like to now move to the first hearing of citizens. Mr. LeConte, could you kindly provide guidance?
Members of the public are now welcome to come up to the microphone to address the Township Committee. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearings tonight. Those present may step up to the microphone to be heard. If you're watching via Zoom, you may speak during any of the public comment sessions by following the Zoom instructions to raise your hand. Whether in person or online, when you're recognized to speak, please mind the following procedures. Please say your name, spell your last name, and give the name of your street. You do not need to give your street number. All public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Rather than use any of your time answering questions, the Township Committee will wait until you finish speaking before responding. There are 2 public comment sessions on tonight's agenda. Each member of the public will be limited to 1 comment of up to 3 minutes during each public comment period. Written comments submitted to the Township Clerk before 3 p.m. today will be read during the public comment sessions. Written comments are subject to the same guidelines as oral comments. Duplicative written comments may be summarized rather than read in full, according to guidelines issued by the New Jersey Division of Local Government Services. And we have not received any written comments.
Thank you, Mr. LeConte. Do we have anyone in the digital realm?
We do not have any hands raised by the digital participants.
Thank you. I now invite anyone out in our audience to approach the microphone, should they desire to speak. There is no one, so I will now close the first hearing of citizens. Next on our agenda is the public hearing and adoption of ordinances. We have ordinance 2025-01, special emergency appropriation for reevaluation. I'd like to now open up a public hearing for ordinance 2025-01. Mr. LeConte, do we have anyone online? And I do not see anyone in the audience. So I'll now close public hearing. I'll ask for a motion to adopt ordinance 2025-01, special emergency appropriation for reevaluation.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. I shall now close discussion and take vote. Mr. LeConte, may I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Alperowitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald,
Yes.
Mr. McHugh,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Rowland,
Yes.
Mayor Choi.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. LeConte. On to now introduction of ordinances. Mr. Shoddy, could you kindly introduce our first ordinance? Do a first reading?
Yes, Mayor, the first ordinance for your consideration this evening is ordinance 2025-02. First ordinance for introduction this evening, to clarify, is an ordinance to effectuate a lease of municipal property for the purposes of a cell tower operation. The tower already exists. We're not building a new one yet. The tower is there, so this is a lease for a new operator for that tower, who would then go out and obtain subleases with carriers, which this is something that's been going on for several decades here already in Chatham. It's a revenue opportunity for the township. The winning bid was better than our reserve. I believe it was almost $20,000 above our reserve. That's just in the lease as well. We have an upfront payment, and then we will be getting 50% of revenues from that as well.
Wonderful. And so, yeah, to clarify, there's an existing tower?
Correct.
Right?
It's
And-
located on the DPW property.
I now, so I now will open up for discussion for the committee. Apologies, yes. Ask for a motion to introduce ordinance 2025-02, cell tower lease.
I move to introduce ordinance 2025-02.
And I will second.
Thank you. I shall now open up for discussion by the committee.
Yeah, I think we have all the information on this one, just to remind residents, we cover a lot of this during workshops. So, yeah, so I think we're fully informed.
Thank you. I shall now close discussion and take a vote. Mr. LeConte?
Mr. Alperowitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald,
Yes.
Mr. McHugh,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Rowland,
Yes.
and Mayor Choi.
Yes.
Motion passes and public hearing will be scheduled for February 25th.
Mr. Shadi, could I, introduce the next ordinance?
Yes, ordinance 2025-03 is our salary range ordinance. This is an ordinance that sets the minimums and maximums for all employees in the township that are not covered by a collective bargaining agreement, which would include our Teamsters for DPW and PBA for the police department. These salary ranges do not set the salaries, they simply create guardrails for the employees. Every year, you would set the actual salaries by way of resolution. This is to make sure that our salary ranges are updated in line with market conditions. They're updated in line with what some of our existing employees, based off their worth, their productivity, and our desire to retain quality employees. This was based on an analysis also of salaries for these positions or comparable positions from municipalities in the area. This would hopefully suffice for employees through 2027 to 2028. So we were not doing this ordinance every year in addition to a resolution. And we did cover this in workshop, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those tonight as well.
Thank you, Mr. Shahadi. Can I get a motion to introduce ordinance 2025-03, salary ranges?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. I shall now open it up for discussion by the committee. Pretty straightforward, right? I shall now close discussion and take a vote. Mr. LeConte, can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Alperowitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes.
Mr. McHugh?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Rowland?
Yes.
And Mayor Choi.
Yes.
Motion passes and public hearing will be scheduled for February 25th.
Next up. Okay, Mayor. Ordinance 2025-04 is an ordinance that updates your bylaws. Nothing tremendously or earth-shattering here, tremendously groundbreaking or earth-shattering in this. It's making sure that the standing committees of the governing body, per your request, reflect the realities of the workload. So it combines the workload of the Recreation Standing Committee with the Administration and Personnel Committee. And because also the utilities regularly communicate with administration, there's no need for a standalone designee as a utilities liaison. And those are the two main changes. The other changes clarifying that the order of the agenda may be subject to change because at times there's additions, deletions, maybe the events or activities of the governing body warrant a change in the sequence of events, so we want to make sure you have that flexibility in the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Shadi. Is there a motion to introduce ordinance 2025-04, bylaws update?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. I shall now open up for discussion by committee.
I did just have one comment. I just want, after looking at it, I just wondered if it would make sense to just change administration, personnel, and communications just to administration, because by excluding things like recreation, then people say who covers recreation, maybe we just call it administration and, okay.
You can include a bunch of things if you want, otherwise that name will just go on.
Going on.
Yeah. But by excluding, yeah, we don't want, 10, but by excluding it, it looks like we're not taking it seriously, which we are. So, so that would be my only suggestion, is to change administration, personnel, communications to administration.
You want to make that change for this ordinance, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so I think
do
since it's has not yet been introduced, it could be considered a friendly amendment to introduce it with that change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Introduce it, change it, come back and go through the whole process.
Right.
If everyone is in agreement, you can consider it a friendly amendment.
Right.
Introduce it as
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Mr. LeConte?
Yes, I do.
Oh, second, yeah.
Thank you. I now close discussion. Let's take it to a vote. Mr. LeConte, roll call, please.
Mr. Alperowitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes.
Mr. McHugh?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Rowland?
Yes.
And Mayor Choi.
Yes.
Motion passes. Public hearing on February 25th.
Thank you, Mr. LaConte. Mr. Shoddy, next ordinance, please.
Ordinance 2025-05 on police licensing. This is an ordinance that amends our code to clarify the requirements in order to serve as a police officer in Chatham, in line with the new licensing requirements that were instituted at the state level by state legislation. So we're just doing some housekeeping here to make sure that our ordinances are in line with the state's laws, and to make sure that our police officers are all licensed as required, in good standing, and that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Shoddy. I would like to ask if there's a motion to introduce ordinance 2025-05, police licensing.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. I shall now open up for discussion by committee.
Just important, I think, for everyone to know that all of our police officers are already licensed. They're very diligent about all of this, so this doesn't really change anything. Just in case anyone's tuning in, it's just kind of, just for people to understand, it's kind of making it the norm and requirement.
Thank you, Committeeman. Is there anything else? I shall now close discussion. Take it to vote. Mr. LaConte, roll call, please.
Mr. Alperowitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald,
Yes.
Mr. McHugh,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Rowland,
Yes.
and Mayor Choi.
Yes.
Public hearing on the 25th, motion having passed.
Thank you, Mr. Shoddy.
Next ordinance for your consideration is ordinance 2025-06, which amends our code concerning private alarm systems. So this is alarm systems that individuals would have at their homes or places of business. In the olden days, alarm systems would all be hardwired to police departments, and there were requirements to have them registered, applications, the whole process. This is, again, a housekeeping matter to update our code to reflect the current reality, which is there's commercial entities that do this and liaise directly with police departments. So it's eliminating a number of provisions in our ordinance that are either redundant or just incompatible with current practices. But it does leave the provisions in there for false alarms, which do happen, and really this is not intended to penalize somebody with accidental false alarms, but those with repeated false alarms because they're not tending to the maintenance or the repairs that they need to make to their alarm systems.
Thank you, Mr. Shoddy. Is there a motion to introduce ordinance 2025-06, alarm systems?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. And now open up for discussion. I now close for discussion by committee. Mr. LaConte, roll call, please.
Mr. Alperowitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald,
Yes.
Mr. McHugh,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Rowland,
Yes.
Mayor Choi.
Yes.
Motion passes, and public hearing on the 25th of February.
Thank you, Mr. LaConte. Mr. Shoddy, question. Before we get to the consent agenda and non-consent agenda items, certainly before non-consent agenda item, would it be possible to bring up Ms. Almeida for the presentation?
I was just about to message you to ask you to do that before the...
Before the resolution, yes.
You can do it now, you can do it right before the affordable housing resolution, whenever you like.
Well, let's go through the consent agenda, and then before we get to the resolution, we'll invite Ms. Almeida. Great. Wonderful. Approval of consent agenda. Is there a member of the committee who would like to exclude any item from the consent agenda? Wonderful. I now ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Mr. LaConte, roll call, please.
Mr. Alperowitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald,
Yes.
Mr. McHugh,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Rowland,
Yes.
and Mayor Choi.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Now, before we get to the non-consent agenda item, I would like to invite Ms. Almeida up.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, we're here tonight because on the agenda is a resolution to adopt affordable housing obligations for the fourth round, which is for the next 10 years, so from 2025 to 2035. So we're just going to go through a few key things, hopefully answer any questions anybody has. So the Mount Laurel Doctrine is a constitutional obligation for New Jersey municipalities that they provide a realistic opportunity for affordable housing in their borders. And this has been a doctrine that is its roots in the 1970s when the Township of Mount Laurel was sued over the fact that they were not producing zoning regulations that permitted an opportunity for everybody to live in Mount Laurel. Over the past few years, or the past 40 years, there's been many different lawsuits that have refined the doctrine to where we are today. In March of this year, the state legislature passed a new law which updates the Fair Housing Act, which is where we get our regulations for affordable housing. And this law set forth how we were going to calculate the obligations for each of the municipalities in New Jersey to provide their fair share and realistic opportunity for affordable housing. So the Department of Consumer Affairs, the DCA, calculated that in the next 10 years, we would need 80,000 affordable housing units throughout the entire state of New Jersey. And then that's further broken down into regions. And so Chatham is in Region 2, and the DCA calculated that there would be 20,000 affordable housing units needed in those 4 counties. That doesn't mean that the 20,000 units in just one county, 20,000 throughout all of the counties over the next 10 years. So based on the Department of Consumer Affairs calculations, they found that Chatham had a present need or rehabilitation need of 30 units. And what that means is over the next 10 years, we need to rehabilitate 30 units or provide funding to rehabilitate 30 units. They also found we have a prospective need, a new construction need of 146 units. And that's using various factors, including our income capacity, non-residential valuation factors, and our land capacity factor. Land capacity is the big one right here. If you notice on our next slide, we're going to talk about it a little bit. So the land capacity factor, the DCA looked at each municipality and estimated or calculated how much developable land there was. And as planners in the last few months reviewed these calculations, they found that the DCA included many properties which just weren't developable. They may have been properties along a railroad line, properties that had utility easements, properties that may have already had projects built on them. When the planners went back through, and especially for Chatham, we found that DCA had calculated that we had 12.2 developable acres, but when we reviewed those parcels, we found that only 0.26 acres were actually developable. That caused a reduction in our land capacity factor. When you apply that land capacity factor to our obligation, it modified it to 141 units instead of 156, which is about a 10% adjustment. Now, that 141 units is going to be further modified during the process in the next few months when the township's professionals prepare a housing element and fair share plan. We will use whatever tools that the legislature and the state have given to us to apply downward adjustments to that 141 units. These include things like a vacant land analysis, a durational adjustment such as the amount and the capabilities of the infrastructure like sewer and water. And that number, once we have a number, then the housing element will address how we will build those units over the next 10 years. So it's important to realize that, one, we're not going to be obligated to build 141 units, and also that whatever the obligation we determine will be done over the next 10 years. Does anybody have any questions that I can address?
I don't have any questions. I think we've talked about it quite a number of times. I just wanted to thank you for your analysis and also this committee, which precedes me or predates me, for going through these steps in order to arrive at a pretty data-driven conclusion. So thank you all collectively for your diligence there.
Ms. Almeida, thank you for the presentation.
No problem. If anyone has any questions, just let me know.
I guess I don't have a question. I would just make a comment for the benefit of residents. Just to put the 156 prospective need / 141 prospective need in perspective, in the third round affordable housing cycle, I think our prospective needs started out at like 700. It came down to about 500, and then I think in the final pass-through was probably about 350 and wound up with 100 units to be built. So I don't want people focused on the number because there's a lot more that's going to take place over the next 6 months, and especially the vacant land adjustment is a key part of that analysis. So I just want to make sure our residents are aware that this is the beginning of the story, not the end.
Thank you, Committee Women. Let's see. So the one and only item on our non-consent agenda is Resolution 2025-62, adopting affordable housing obligation. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-062?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. LeConte?
Mr. Alperowitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald,
Yes.
Mr. McHugh,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Rowland, yeah, Deputy Mayor Rowland,
Yes.
still getting used to new titles, and Mayor Choi.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. LeConte. We now move on to the second hearing of citizens. Mr. LeConte, is there anyone who wishes to speak online? Thank you. We do not have anyone in the audience approaching the microphone, so I shall now close the second hearing of citizens. I asked if there is a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn for the evening.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.